Do golf training aids actually work? I've spent the past 12 months trialing some of the most popular training aids on the market to see if their claims can really be believed, and if they can, how they might be able to help my game and potentially yours. In this video, I'll share everything I've learned. So there is obviously a massive range of golf training aids out there, the weird and wacky and wonderful to the very basic. Some that have been around for a very long time, some which are kind of fly-by-night snake oil training aids, and everything in between. As I said at the outset of this series of videos, and if you haven't watched that, then link should be up there. I'm not just trying anything indiscriminately and just hoping to see what sticks. I have picked a few different training aids based on things that I particularly want to improve and things that in my game need fixing or need some attention. So these have been deliberately chosen, but they do cover a range of different kind of mechanical things in my swing and lots of different types of practice and training. So there has been a good range. And as I said, I've been trying them for over a year now in some cases, some more recently than others. So I'm going to run through what I've tried, how long I've been using it for, what effect it's had, and if I would recommend it for each one of those. So the first thing that I bought on the training aid front was this, and this is a Divot board. Now there are a few different models of this, from the original, which this is I believe, to a lot of knockoffs you can get on Amazon and other places. I think really the difference just comes down to build quality, but fundamentally they're all designed to do the same thing, and that is to replicate ground contact if you're unable to hit off grass. So essentially to show you where a divot would have been made were you hitting a shot on grass, as opposed to on a simulator or on a driving range, or even taking practice swings in your garage or your living room. So essentially the thing that this is supposed to train you to do or give you feedback on is ground contact. So you place a ball on the spot, you hit your shot, and the sequins go white to show you where your club has impacted the ground and then where it's gone through. So you can see a couple of things. You can obviously see the ground impact where your club first hit the ground, and you can also kind of see the shape of your divot, which should indicate roughly the path it was traveling on. Now, ground contact is obviously a massive thing in becoming a decent golfer. You want to hit ball and then turf. So understanding where you're actually hitting is really, really good feedback, particularly for people like me who do most of their practice on a driving range, and a driving range that doesn't have any grass or is just predominantly range mats. Range mats are super forgiving in the first place, so you can think you've hit a good shot on a range mat, which actually wouldn't have been a good shot out on the course, but also they just don't tell you where you actually hit the range mat next to the ball. Was it a little bit behind, way behind, would it have been in front, etc. So something like this is kind of designed to fill that gap when you're practicing and you want to try and improve your ground contact or focus on your ground contact, but you aren't able to get out on the course or onto a grass range. There are some issues with this. One is, as you can see from this one, that it does wear quite quickly. Now I've had this for a while, but it's not like I've hit thousands and thousands of shots on it, and it got battered pretty quickly. It's not the cheapest thing in the world. I think this was about £70, and you can buy replacements for just the insert, but those are still, I think, £40 or £50, so most of the cost of the divot board itself. I don't think the claims on the website as to how long this lasts in terms of swings are accurate, or certainly this one wore a lot quicker than I was expecting it to. The other thing, and I've heard similar from other golfers before, is that hitting off this is just a little bit uncomfortable. It obviously raises the ball up by, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch or so, which isn't ideal. Not the biggest problem in the world, but isn't ideal. The lie is basically as tight as it's going to get. There's almost no cushion underneath the ball, which on the one hand is good for feedback, but again, on the other hand, isn't necessarily the most comfortable thing to hit off. And I have just found that I don't hit very good shots off this. Now, this probably says as much about me as it does about the training aid, but it's just not something that I love using because of that. And I suppose a training aid is only ever going to be as good as you are likely to use it. So I would say that is a negative against the divot board. What I have found useful with it though is not hitting shots, but just getting feedback on my ability to control the depth of my swing. So what I use this for now more than anything is basically just practice swings or practicing hitting the board in the place I want to. So I won't even put a ball on it. I will just practice hitting the yellow spot or in front of it or behind it or whatever, essentially trying to get my motor control better and get my ability to, in theory, hit the ground in the right place to be more predictable. So that's what I would recommend it for. I think ground contact is one of those overlooked things when people practice. So some form of feedback is invaluable. I think if you have a grass range or grass you can hit off consistently, that would be preferable. In terms of actually being able to practice hitting shots, something like the towel drill, where you just place a towel, a few inches behind your ball, is probably more enjoyable to do than hitting off this, certainly just in my opinion. But if you just want to learn to get your ground contact more consistently in the right place, this is good for that, and it is good feedback. It does provide that, even if it's not the most fun thing to use in terms of actually hitting shots off. So I would probably give this a kind of mid thumb, but it is something that brings to mind ground contact as a focus, which I think is probably something which lacks in some people's practice routines. The second thing I bought, which I've had for about 9 months now, is the Perfect Practice putting mat, which I don't have with me here, but I will insert video of now, thanks to the magic of editing. So yes, this is the Perfect Practice putting mat, which doesn't really require too much explanation. It is essentially a 9-foot piece of green felt with 2 holes, one standard size cup and one kind of half size cup for precision putting. And it's also got this ball return, so you can stand near, hit putts, and the ball will either roll back to you down the slope, or if you make it, funnel back down to you down the ramp. It's not really designed for anything other than just hitting straight putts and getting the speed right, but it's a useful thing to have at home to enable you to putt indoors. Obviously, it's tricky in the winter time to get out and do practice on real greens in the evenings or mornings because it's too dark or too cold or frosty or whatever. So this is just quite good for hitting a few putts and keeping kind of mechanics dialed in, working on start line, stroke, that kind of thing. Obviously there are no breaks, and obviously the pace is always the same. So it's not exactly a perfect replication of putting on actual greens, but it's better than nothing. So yeah, no substitute for getting practice out on real greens with real break, but from a mechanical perspective and just having something to get some speed control down with and getting that kind of repetitions when you're at home, when you can't get out to practice properly, I do think that is a good tool. It's probably overkill. You can probably get things which will do just as good a job cheaper or more expensive if you want to go with something like the Putter virtual putting mat. But I think just being able to hit a few putts here and there when you're in your bedroom or in your garage or in your office or whatever is something that's going to be certainly more helpful than not. The next thing I've been using for about 6 months now is this, which is the swing plate. Now, this was something which initially came about via the lessons that I'm having with my current pro. And if you want to see what I think of golf lessons, then watch this video here. And essentially what we would do is just put an alignment stick in the ground. But again, if you do not have a grass range to practice off, if you're at a sim or if you're just at a regular driving range, you can't necessarily do that. So what this does is allow you to angle these alignment sticks in the plate at the right plane that you want them to be on. And the point of doing that is really to help work on the plane of your swing. For me, what that was setting these alignment sticks at an angle whereby I had to go outside of them on my backswing and inside of them on my downswing, which for me achieved 2 things. As a player with an inside takeaway, I needed to try and battle that and get the club outside the stick on the way out. And then as a player who then would come over the top, I needed to try and shallow the club more and get underneath it on the downswing. This is, for me at least, really, really difficult. This is a training aid that I had a lot of trouble using, a lot of trouble getting used to. And I think it's, a difficult task for a beginner or intermediate golfer to do. I have hit it on numerous occasions, sometimes worse than others. I did actually snap an alignment stick fairly early on using it, and it's still something I'm working with. What I would say though is that it is effective. As far as training aids which can actually make you a better golfer go, I think this is one of them. The Divot board is great for feedback. Well, I wouldn't say it necessarily makes you a better player. If you can nail this, I think it will do that. The trouble I've had with it is taking this out on the course. I can set it up on the range, I can hit pretty consistently with what I'm trying to do, outside on the backswing, under it on the downswing, and I could even get to the point where I was doing that pretty much without fail, shot after shot. But then I realized that when I took the training aid away, i.e. when I was out on the course, if I took some video, I wasn't necessarily replicating that movement. So this is one of those things that I'm gonna have to keep working at. And just like with my inside takeaway, it's probably going to take a lot longer to get this ingrained than I would like, to the point where I don't need the barriers and I'm just doing the movement anyway. But I would definitely recommend this to anyone. I used it in that specific way, but it is movable, literally, as in you can set the sticks however you want to. So if you're battling with something different in your swing, this would probably help as well. Helps with alignment, just helps with those mechanics both in the backswing and the downswing. So it's not super expensive, and I would recommend this as a solid training aid to help you get better. And then this is the most recent addition to my suite of training aids, and probably the last one for a while, because I think 4 is plenty. This is the Connector by Shore Golf. It rose to prominence to some extent about 9 months, a year ago or so, when Rory McIlroy was using it on the range before one of his tournaments. And essentially what this is, or what it's supposed to do, as the name suggests, is just keep you more connected through your swing. So you put it between your forearms and it keeps the arms connected to one another, it keeps the arms connected to the body, and it basically promotes a fuller upper body rotation and a fuller shoulder turn, and really just helps make the swing more compact, less moving parts, which is absolutely something I am looking to do. I do tend to get kind of a bit loose and a bit long in my swing, I lose my right elbow a little bit. So this should chime with what I am trying to do. Now, I haven't used it much so far. I'm gonna hit some shots with it now, but it's too early for me to have a verdict on this. So I'm going to use it for a while, probably a couple of months, and see what I think of it. And then I will come back with a verdict and let you know what I think and if I would recommend it. And just like that, it is about 6 weeks later since I recorded the earlier part of this video, and 6 weeks spent not only but testing this, the Shore Golf Connector, and crucially not just testing it or working with it myself, but also with my coach in my lessons. And kind of 2 months or so on, I can say that this is an excellent training aid. Actually, more to the point, I can say this is a complete of a training aid, but a very effective at that. So I find this thing really difficult to use, but that is basically because it is tackling one of, if not my biggest swing flaw currently. And if you haven't checked out the previous video in which I detail exactly what that is, please do so after this. So yeah, for me, this thing is a real challenge. Essentially, as I said before, sits between your forearms, keeps the forearms connected to the body in the backswing, and that achieves several things I have found. One, it kind of limits you from going too long in the backswing. 2, it stops the arms getting out of sync with the body. 3, it tends to produce a shallower downswing, so rather than going over the top, kind of more naturally come more shallow, and it also helps you compress the ball much better. So this thing is great. It's really, really hard, but I think that's probably reflective of the fact that it is effective for me, at least in terms of what I am working with. It's quite difficult to take a full swing, or certainly what feels like a full swing, although actually I can get pretty much as far as I need to. The way I have worked with this personally is starting with short shots, or kind of pitches, working up to something more akin to a full swing. And what I found a good protocol for me now is to do 5 on and 5 off. So I'll do 5 swings with this between my arms and then 5 swings without it, but trying to replicate that same feel. And it's certainly taking some time, but bit by bit I am seeing some improvements from this. I think a little bit like when I started to work on my takeaway. It's not going to be a 6-week process. It's probably going to be more like a 6-month process to actually fully kind of internalize what this is trying to teach me to do without having to have it kind of in between my arms, and can't really take it out on the course with me. People look at you funny, but I am going to stick with it. So I think big picture, can golf training aids help? The answer is yes, but it depends on obviously which ones you pick. There are a lot out there which are basically just a load of nonsense, but even within the ones which are tried and true and tested and proven to work, they won't all just work for you. Just because this works for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you and what you're doing in your swing. And similarly with a bunch of the other ones, there are probably a few things that anyone could benefit from, and that's really like those feedback tools, like spraying dry shampoo on the face of your club to see where you're hitting it, or something like the Divot board that tells you where your ground contact is. There's no one who can't benefit from knowing whether they're hitting the sweet spot of the club or whether they're impacting the ground in the right place. But when it comes to more mechanical things like this, or indeed the swing plate, and the whole slew of things out there that do similar things to the mechanics of your swing, there's kind of fundamental movements, I think it's really up to you to find out what is going to work for you and the current flaws you have. And for me, actually, I got the most benefit out of this when I took it to a lesson, when I sort of had identified with my coach what it is we were going to do, that he thought this might help with that. I got it, and I have since taken it to my lessons, and we have been working with this, and that is when I've seen the most benefit from it. So if you are able to work with a golf coach, obviously you should do anyway. Golf lessons are very effective, but if you want to go down the training aid route as well, or alongside that, then I would certainly say speak to your teaching professional about what training aids might work for the things that you are looking to achieve in your swing. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments below what training aids you might try, what you have tried, what you think is good, bad, and ugly in the world of golf training aids, and I will see you in the next one.